So welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's Writers Access Support Staff Training Program info session. My name is Dustin Fleischmann. I'm the Director of Events and Communications here at the Writers Guild Foundation. Really quickly, for those of you who aren't familiar with our org, we are the nonprofit arm of the Writers Guild of America West. We are dedicated to preserving and promoting the craft of writing for the screen. So in addition to our community programs like Writers Access, we also host a bunch of public events. We also have a public library that is open by appointment only here in Los Angeles. You do not have to be a member of the WGA to take advantage of any of the resources that the foundation offers. So it's a really, really great community organization. I will throw some information, general information about the Writers Guild Foundation in the chat later on. But we're really here to discuss the program and specifics about this year's admissions cycle. Before we get to the conversation, I do have two very important announcements for everybody, so just please listen carefully. First of all, just to make sure we're respecting your time, I want to make sure everyone's in the right place and you've all read and reviewed our eligibility criteria, which I will throw in the chat in a moment. But if you have been working on breaking into TV writing industry as support staff, you are in the right place. If you've previously worked as a writer's assistant or a script coordinator, you are not eligible for this program. Do note that former writers, PAs, and showrunners assistants are eligible to apply. And again, I will put the basic eligibility requirements in the chat in just a moment. We'll expand on these later in the conversation. In addition, I know many of you have a lot of questions about the program. We're going to have a Q&A section at the end. It's going to get started around 7:15, but I strongly recommend that you save any questions until after we get through the first 30 to 45 minutes of the conversation, because we're going to cover a lot of ground. So when you do have a question, and I can prompt you when it's a good time to submit those questions, there is a Q&A box in the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. You just hit that button to submit your question. Do not ask your questions in the webinar chat. Feel free to engage with one another in the chat, but if you submit your question through webinar chat, there's a good chance that we're not going to be able to see it. So we want to make sure we're getting everyone's questions in. Please submit to the Q&A box. Also, if you need, closed captioning is available. It's in the same area as the Q&A box. You just hit the show captions button if you'd like to follow along with those captions. So we have a great group of panelists tonight that I'd like to welcome. So first of all, we're joined by Kira VandenBrande, the director of this phenomenal program, as well as our various community programs at the WGF. In addition, we have program instructors Debbie Ezer and Clay Lapari here, along with Writers Access alumni Gia King and Manny Valdivia. So I will pass things off to them for some quick introductions. Kira, I'd love if you could kick us off. If all of you could just share details about your background, what you do for work, and how you got involved with Writers Access.
Thanks. Yeah. So hi, everyone. I'm sure that I see some familiar names in the participant bar already, but welcome back to anyone who's attending this info session again, and then welcome to any new potential applicants. As Dustin mentioned, I'm Kira. I'm the Director of Community Programs at the Foundation. There I oversee several different initiatives, mostly geared towards uplifting underrepresented voices. So anyone from emerging writers, students, incarcerated individuals, and many, many more groups. So of course, within that umbrella is the Writers Access Program. Before this, I was a union organizer and worked for other nonprofits, and now I'm here to give you some info about the program. I'll go ahead and pass it to Clay.
Thank you, Kira. Hello, everybody. My name is Clay. I was a longtime script coordinator for many years on many shows, mostly comedy shows, single camera and multicam. I sort of bring, in the partnership of Debbie and I as co-instructors, I sort of bring the comedy perspective of what it's like working in comedy rooms.
And he brings the jokes.
And endless jokes. I did it for a long time, eventually getting staffed I was finally able to close that script coordinator chapter and open the staff writing chapter. I wrote for the iCarly reboot and most recently a Marvel show called Wonder Man that is going to premiere in December. But I have been teaching alongside Debbie with this program since the beginning in 2001. I mean, 2021.
It just feels like that long.
It does feel like that. Thrilled with the success that we've had. I become more passionate about it every year. It's just such a great opportunity, and a great just a great mission statement overall. And yeah, that's glad you're all here. Debbie, go for it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Ezer. It's great to see so many people here interested in the program. I, in my previous life, was a litigator who discovered I was a litigator who hated to fight and I wanted to write. So I left the practice of law and started over from the bottom. And just like Clay, for a long time, I worked in support staff positions. I worked as a showrunner's assistant and a writer's assistant, and eventually transitioned to working as a script coordinator. I've worked, as Clay said, he brings the comedy, I bring the drama, although no tantrums, I promise. Gia and Manny, I hope you will confirm. So I've worked on network dramas, I've worked on cable dramas, I've worked on streaming shows. I have some experience in comedy, but Clay has the bulk of that. So just like Clay, I spent a long time, trying to make that leap, working my way up. Clay neglected to mention he's written a ton of freelance scripts. He's incredibly talented. And so people always wanted to hire him to get the bonus of, being an incredible writer as well as being really good at the script coordinating job. I also got to write some freelances myself. And then just this year, I finally also made the leap and got promoted to staff writer on a show that I was working on. It's a limited series that will be on Peacock next year called The Good Daughter, based on the novel of the same name by the writer Karen Slaughter. Any of you Atlanta natives know, I'm sure, about her, or any of you who like to read good books know about her. Yeah, I see Love Karen Slaughter in the chat. Yeah, she's amazing and so talented and generous and wonderful. She was the showrunner of the show. So yeah, so that's where I'm at. And I'm gonna throw to Gia to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Gia King. I was in the inaugural class of the Writers Access Support Staff Training Program all the way back in 2021 and not 2001. And I was accepted in the class right out of college. I was kind of like flailing and freaking out and didn't know how to enter into the post-pandemic industry and feeling very crazy about my future. And it was kind of the perfect middle ground between, the deep blue ocean of actually trying to get work and the safe classroom environment of college. And it was a really amazing, fantastic opportunity to learn from some really amazing and fantastic instructors who had a ton of experience and made me not feel so freaked out about my future and what I was doing. And after learning from the program, which you're going to obviously learn a lot about over the course of this info session, so I won't go over exactly how it works in exquisite detail, I was hired as a writer's assistant on Agatha All Along. And I was lucky enough to get a script while I was there. And I worked as a writer's assistant in a few more rooms after that. And then I, a year ago, was staffed on a mini room for a show at Marvel that I can't talk about. But it's all thanks to the tools that I was given in the support staff training program. And anytime they ask me to do anything, I can only do so much but repay them. And that's why I'm here singing their praises.
Thrilled to have you.
And I'm passing it to Manny. I forgot my one thing. I'm passing it to Manny.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Manny. I was, I believe also maybe the inaugural 2021 class, but the second part.
Exactly.
Um,
Yep.
and yeah, it was just such a great experience. Prior to that, I had graduated with like an English major. I just wanted to write, and done the UCLA Writers Extension program as well. I've been working in the industry for some time, kind of working as an assistant to like executives, directors, um, maybe like more in a personal capacity. And you know, after that, I worked in localization, doing transcription work, dubbing work for TV and film. You know, I was never able to kind of just graduate to that next step, get my little entry into the writer's room. I remember being, working as an assistant for an executive, and across the hall was the writer's assistant. And it felt so close, but so far at the same time, which was really interesting. But yeah, this program has been amazing, gave me all the tools I needed. I got my first writer's room assistant job in 2023 for a mini room for a show called Sam Jones. I was supposed to be on Prime, I believe. But unfortunately, that was interrupted by the strikes. Uh, I don't even remember how long ago that was,
It's a blur.
but yeah, that was such an amazing experience, and I don't think I could have really been successful at it without this program and Debbie and Clay and all the tools they gave me during the class. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to answering all of your questions later as well. So yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for dedicating your time today to everybody. So just to kind of kick things off, I'd love to, kind of lay some background and some context. So Kira, the first question is for you. Can you kind of tell us what the Writers Access Support Staff Training Program is and who is it for?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if I miss anything, Clay and Debbie, please jump in. Just to give the broad strokes, as many of you probably saw on our website, the Writers Access Support Staff Training Program. It's a 12-week, though it tends to go a little longer, workshop. It provides emerging writers with the tools and educations to become a writer's assistant or script coordinator. So basically, the training you need to take on a support staff role. And it was originally founded by Mike Royce, Tanya Sriracho, and Liz Alper, who came to Debbie and Clay, who had been doing something like this previously. And their ultimate goal was to increase the inclusion and employment of underrepresented writers. So specifically in the television industry, I should say. And we don't have a hard and fast rule about who exactly can apply, but like we said, this is a program for writers from historically underrepresented backgrounds. So generally speaking, we encourage BIPOC writers, LGBTQ plus writers, disabled writers, and writers over the age of 50 to apply. These are groups that have been identified as particularly underrepresented in writers' rooms. So that's kind of who we're serving, what we do. Ultimately, by the end of the program, I would like to connect graduates with jobs when at all possible. Though, of course, as you know, the industry is in a state right now, but we still put in the effort by compiling a lookbook, reaching out to our contacts. So anyone from showrunners, producers, agents and managers, executives from studios and networks, we distribute a lookbook that features information about our graduates. So ideally, we hope to actually connect people with these opportunities, and then there's a lot of ongoing hiring and outreach that happens pretty much indefinitely. As you can see, Gia and Manny are still here and involved, and they were in the program several years ago. Please feel free, if I missed anything, to jump in.
I think you did a great job.
Perfect. Well, just to add some additional context, can we sort of deconstruct, the various positions in a writer's room? So who's all in the room? What is a writer's assistant? What is a script coordinator? How are they different? And why are those roles so important? And this question is for anybody.
Yeah, I'll take this. So a typical writer's room can be anywhere between 4 writers to 12 writers. And a writing staff is going to have a support staff. Ideally, that is going to look like it's going to have a script coordinator, a writer's assistant, and hopefully a writer's PA. Not all shows have writer's PAs. And then there will be a showrunner's assistant who's going to sort of be outside of the room, but is part of the group. Typically, a writer's assistant's main responsibility is note-taking. So there will be discussions all day, every day about, big ideas about what the season might look like, or very focused ideas on what this particular scene is going to look like. And your job is just to be transcribing notes, organizing notes, cleaning them up, having them going through them later, and so like presenting them in a way that writers can easily digest them and use them. Also, some research will sometimes fall on your plate as a writer's assistant. Showrunner may ask you to look up something that is being discussed in the room, and maybe over that night or on lunch or whatever, you do a little bit of that. The script coordinator has a ton of responsibilities. It's a big job. You're basically the department head of the support staff. And in addition to script distribution, you're distributing all materials to everyone, to cast, crew, writers, studio, and network. You're also the point person for all department heads. So if there's anybody in any other department has an issue with a script or a question about the script, they're not going to typically go to the showrunner. They're going to go to you and say, hey, we have some questions about the props in this episode. Can you ask your boss about this, this, and this? And you'd be relaying that. You're also constantly communicating with the line producer about script changes, in the production office about putting out revisions. You're dealing with clearances. You're trying to make sure that the things that you're talking about in the script are approved to be said and shown on screen. And you're also handling paperwork. Sometimes, depending on what show you're working on, you may have a mountain of paperwork that you're responsible basically for helping writers get paid for their scripts, among other things. So that's an overview of the script coordinator position. The writer's PA is primarily getting lunches and getting coffees for the room. Like, that's your main job. You're also cleaning up the writer's room at the end of the day, maybe stocking a supply cabinet, maybe stocking a fridge. But hopefully you're also available to fill in note-taking responsibilities. Let's say a room is busy and there's people working in a few different rooms, an A room and a B room and a C room. They need someone in that C room at the keyboard. Hopefully the writer's PA is invited and encouraged to do that, so you can get some reps that way. And then the showrunner's assistant is the showrunner's assistant and is just a shoulder to, just handling phone calls, meetings. Very confidentiality is a big part of that. You want to make sure, you're a real partner with the showrunner. And through that, you get to see the process of making a show through a lens that you really don't see in any other position. Like, you're sort of behind the curtain, which is really cool if you can get that opportunity. Yeah, but those are the main roles of support staff in a room.
Perfect. And before we move on to sort of the application process, I'm just curious, what are the typical salary ranges or benefits or time commitment for a support staff role?
So I can jump in with that one. Just to say briefly, the way Clay and I actually met and became friends is we were both part leaders of the group that organized writers, assistants, and script coordinators a few years back into IATSE. And prior to that, the positions were, they're still like not the highest paid, but were incredibly low paid. And so with the work of lots of other people, we were able to get them unionized. And now both writer's assistant and script coordinator positions have the same hourly minimum, which is currently, I believe, $28.50 an hour. That is about to go up the first Monday of August, I believe, is how it's written into the current contract. And it's something like a 4% increase, I believe. I would have to go back and double check, so don't quote me, but so it will go up. And the minimum hours are, it's an 8-hour guaranteed per work day on a weekday. And So there's all sorts of negotiating tips that we give people when they're, I think Manny and Gia can probably attest. I'm pretty sure Manny and I hopped on the phone when you were negotiating your job. So all sorts of things. The industry standard has been 60 hours a week. The studios have definitely been trying to pay fewer minimum hours, 50, sometimes 50, sometimes whatever. So that will affect how much you bring in a week. And then there are also other things that studios are required to pay per California law. Cell phone usage, because as a writer's assistant and script coordinator, you absolutely are required to use your cell phone for work, and they must pay you for that. And then if you have any kind of work from home situation, if you're not in person, then there's a stipend for that.
Perfect. Thank you. That was so comprehensive. I'd love to kind of jump into the application process, and then we can kind of talk a little bit about, qualities and skills that writers assistants and script coordinators can have. But really quickly, Kira, I'd love to know a little bit more about the application window. So how do folks apply? What is the window like? When do submissions need to be submitted?
Yeah, so important date to start. Applications open August 7th. August 7th at 11 a.m. Pacific. That's a Thursday. So keep that date in mind. Of course, all of this is listed on our website. So if you miss it, that's always a great place to check. August 7th, applications open. They're going to remain open until September 16th. And that would be at the absolute end of the day, 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. So you have the full day to get in a last minute application, although I highly recommend applying early, and we'll get into that in a little bit. The way that you'll do it is you can either visit our website, our program page, which Dustin just shared the chat, to find that link. It's not posted yet because the application window is not open yet. But on August 7th, you'll see it there on the program page as well as the application guidelines page. Or if you subscribe to our general weekly newsletter or the Writers Access Support Step Training Program newsletter, you'll also be sent the link directly there. I think that was everything.
I think so too. I think you covered a lot. What materials, though, should writers or applicants have prepared for their submission?
As of now, we're asking for a summary of any, past writing experience or education that you might have had. Generally, like, what is your connection? What have you been doing? What do you write? Your preferred genres, as well as any creative influences, like things that shows that maybe have inspired you, as well as kind of what you're looking for in your own writing career or career in general. Some responses to essay questions, which we're not going to get into the specifics of exactly what we ask in these questions, but it's going to be similar to previous years if you applied before. These are usually no more than 100-word responses, and there's only 2 to 3 max. It's essentially just talking about your writing experience or interests or something along those lines. So just keep a few short answer questions. And then most importantly, I would say, is the personal statement. Unless there are any changes, the limit is 400 words max. We'll provide some tips as to how to write that statement, but just know this is absolutely critical. This is your way to stand out. Please do not skip over this and take advantage of the opportunity to write this statement. 400 words max. And then last, we have the resume. That's I think the last thing we asked for.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
I'm just going to jump in about the resume and note that what we really want to see in your resume is your work history. We want to know what you've been doing. This is not a program that is going to teach you anything about how to write. I mean, you're applying to this program because you're a writer who wants to break into rooms, and this is one pathway in. But it's really, really relevant to us to see what you've been up to. And the whole point of the reason this program exists is to give a pathway to people who haven't found that pathway. So we're not looking for people who have a zillion, different kinds of experience in the industry. We know that there are so many barriers, and that's why Mike and Tanya and Liz created this program. But we really want to see what you've been up to, because there's so many portable skills, and that's super important. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you for touching on that, Debbie. And it actually kind of like segues perfectly into my next question, which is like, what if I am applying for this program? What should I highlight on my resume, specifically around like skills and experience? Like, what are sort of those skills and experiences that you might be looking for that make an effective writer's assistant or script coordinator?
Well, before Clay or I jump in, I would love to hear, Gia and Manny,
Yeah.
who successfully applied, if that's not putting you two on the spot too much, if you don't mind giving your thoughts.
I'm trying to remember what I put on like my resume and how I applied with. I'm sure if I like looked through my files, I could actually find it, which might be helpful by the end of the night. I do remember spending a lot of time emphasizing how much I wrote, like spent time in sort of college writers' rooms. Like I was really involved in like my college comedy like TV scene and like our satirical newspaper. So I was saying that I had experience in writers' room environments, but just didn't know how to sort of translate those skills into like a professional environment. And I didn't want to, completely make a fool of myself or anything. Um, uh, but I don't know. While I think of like what my actual resume said, maybe Manny can pick up some of my slack.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back as well. Yeah, I think, I had bounced around from job to job before that, so it was probably a little all over the place, but it was very honest to my work history up to that point. I think I had worked as an assistant for a TV executive. I had worked in dubbing and transcription work, and I really enjoyed that. I even had some time working in hospitality. I worked in hotels for a long time, which I really enjoyed. But despite having some work history that wasn't like industry related, I think that I hope like my resume showed that like I always try to find my way back to writing somehow, or like find my way back into it. Even with my college history, I started off as a communications major with an emphasis in film, TV writing. And then I had exhausted all those courses, and then I was just like, well, I'll just be an English major because at least I could keep writing. So I think maybe I try to emphasize that
Yeah,
part.
I mean, and I can speak to that directly, Manny. I mean, you worked in transcription, and being a writer's assistant is not being a transcriber, but certainly those skills are eminently transferable, as are or were your hospitality skills, because we talk a lot about being in a writer's room. It's super important that you know how to read a room well, that you are, I mean, being in hospitality is being in customer service. Being in a writer's room is not exactly customer service, but you're sitting in a room with people all day, every day. And you both have done this, Manny and Gia. So you have to get along with people. You have to be constructive. Those are portable skills. That's what I mean by it, you might not think you have directly relatable experience to these jobs. I guarantee you, if you've been out there, hustling and working, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, just to reiterate, do not hesitate to leave all your previous work history on here.
Please do. Yeah.
That outside of the industry, we want to see if you were a police officer in a previous life, or if you worked on a golf course, or whatever. Like those things we take into consideration, especially as we start to narrow down our pool. But let us know if what efforts have you made to get into the industry? We want to know. Tell us about the barriers that you faced that have you faced trying to get in. Ideally, we're getting candidates. A lot of our candidates are people who have been putting time into this, and that this is a real passion of yours, and something that you're coming to this program as not a last resort, but like, hey, maybe this is going to help me break through what I've been trying to get through, as opposed to like, oh, writing might be fun. Let's try this. We don't. My point is this is a program to help people. We want to get people work, and we want to get those people who really are passionate about these careers jobs if we can. So yeah, we look at both industry experience, but also outside of industry experience.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a big tip in general when job hunting that you're looking at the skills and the experience that, you know, a job is looking for. So a writer, for in the context of a writer's assistant and script coordinator, you might have a job or have worked in a role that has nothing to do with the entertainment industry. It's all about finding the skills that you picked up on that job that are transferable to that role and sort of outlining that in your resume and in your application. Speaking of the application, I know we covered the eligibility criteria in the beginning. I'm going to throw it back in the chat again. So just to be perfectly clear, to qualify for this program, applicants must be 18 years of age or older, be eligible to work in the US, and demonstrate meaningful ongoing efforts to break into professional TV writing, show a clear interest in pursuing employment and support staff roles, be available to attend all program sessions during the 12-week course, and maintain an inclusive, respectful attitude towards fellow participants, mentors, and staff. In addition, and Kira, correct me if I'm wrong here, previous writer's assistants and script coordinators are not eligible to apply. However, if you've worked as a writer's PA or a showrunner's assistant, you are eligible to apply. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. And then just to clarify, if you've worked as a staff writer in the past, or maybe you've worked as a writer on like an indie film or an indie project, how does that, you know, impact your eligibility?
So I would say if you have worked as a staffed writer on a television show, that you are not likely to be selected for this program because you've already had the experience of being in a room, and you know, so nothing specifically, and Kira can correct me if I'm wrong, nothing specifically in our application language disqualifies you from applying, but you are not likely to be selected ahead of people who have never been able to get into a writer's room.
Right.
In terms of an indie film writer, like that's different. You know, you've been creating opportunities for yourself. That shows hustle. And you know, or you've worked as a staff writer on like a digital series, or you know, outside of the system, you've been, you know, hustling to do whatever you can to get experience. That absolutely are things we want to see. But I will just emphasize, this is a program that will train you to be support staff in a TV writer's room. So we really want to see that we all love movies and TV, but we want to see that you have a passion for working in television. And if you're also an indie film writer, that's awesome. But we want to see that you've made efforts to break into TV.
Right. We want to get you work as support staff. We want you to be excited to work support staff jobs if we can get them. We don't want people to try to abuse this program to quickly get into a room and be a writer, and like suddenly get in a room and just pitching stuff and trying to prove yourself creatively while neglecting your role as a support staff. That's something that we really don't want to happen.
And on the opposite end of the spectrum, being a staff writer, being a production assistant or having worked as a production assistant in any capacity, that doesn't disqualify you either.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay,
We've
perfect.
had many people come through the program who've been PAs.
We've had people in post who are, you know, they want to be writers, but the closest they can get is the post department. They're editing, and they desperately want to get out. That's great, you know.
Yeah, we've had people who've worked in the art department, from all different departments. You know, we know people take jobs in different departments because they're looking to get access to the writer's office. And, you know, that's what we're looking for. What have you been doing to try to get in?
Yeah, and thank you for kind of mentioning that at the end. I think that kind of highlights what constitutes those meaningful efforts, ongoing efforts to break into this space. Is there anything else that you would consider constitutes like meaningful, ongoing efforts to break in as a TV writer?
Yeah, I think talking about networking opportunities that you are frequent, you know, that if you're in a writers group or if you're out there trying to, you know, I remember people were talking about how they were active on the picket line, trying to get out there and help and socialize and meet people doing that. You know, we are in no way, no one needs to have a degree in any of this. You don't need to have graduated with a production degree. But if you have, that's evidence of, you know, a commitment toward this. Have you moved to LA to pursue your dream and you've left home to come out here, like that's a big step. We tell us that. And then maybe you've been out here and you've been waiting tables because you haven't been able to get real interviews, all those little things count as efforts toward the big goal, and we want to see that.
Let's touch a little bit more, kind of to switch gears a little bit, on a specific element of the application process, which is that personal statement. So I would love to know what really goes into an effective personal statement. And Gia, Manny, feel free to jump in here. I don't know if you remember anything that you highlighted in your personal statement, but would love to hear sort of what, how do you kind of pitch yourself too as an incoming staff writer or an emerging writer?
I'm I'm trying to remember what my personal statement was. I know that from having to do several personal statements for college and I just had to do one much more recently for the mentorship program in the WGA LGBTQ committee. What usually helps me, because I'm really bad at talking about myself and I'm really bad at bragging or doing any sort of thing to acknowledge myself in any way. I'm it's not natural to me and I don't know how to do it. So I usually have to frame it in some sort of as a creative writing exercise itself. And I think when I was writing my college applications, I wrote them from the perspective of my family watching me do college applications, and when I was doing my LGBTQ committee statement, I was talking about how I framed it as I hate writing, but I hate doing everything else so much more. I hate not writing so much more than I hate writing. And so what really helps me whenever I'm writing a personal statement for any reason is approaching it from a creative angle, and not necessarily a gimmick, or it doesn't need to necessarily be I'm writing this from the perspective of the keys that are being tapped on or whatever, but it helps me, and I think it ultimately helps me stand out a little bit, and showcases my ability to write, if I can frame it in a more interesting way than just my name is Gia King, this is what I do, this is what I've done. And no shade to anybody who does that. That's my perspective and how I approach it usually.
Yeah, I think when I wrote my personal statement, I also don't kind of remember what the exact subject matter was. But in doing these personal statements, I always try to think of a personal anecdote, something just a really specific story, something that is it's not a big picture thing, but I feel like it says something about me. I feel like I wrote something about, because I'm a native Angelino. I was born and raised here, very proud of that. I was raised in Boyle Heights, and very proud to have been from there. And again, it's that thing I talked about where I was sitting in front of the writer's assistant's office, and it was so close yet so far. And growing up in LA, it's just one of those things where it's so close but so far at the same time. And so I think I wrote a little bit about that experience. But yeah, my go-to is always to write something personal.
I think that you both have given incredibly good advice on this, and especially the idea of seizing upon an anecdote, to tell us something specific about yourself, something, that goes to what it is, what it is that's motivating you to want to be in this program. We want to know about you, of course, but we want to know in particular about what is it about you that is driving you to want to be part of this program. And so when you're writing that personal statement, really think about what this program is and what it prepares you to do, and what the opportunities are from this program specifically. And so that's what we look for in these personal statements, is that you really have an understanding of what the program does and does not do, and that you make a point to very specifically relate yourself to that.
Absolutely. Gia, I just want to go back to kind of what you mentioned about being introverted. I think a lot of writers are very introverted and very shy about talking about themselves. But Debbie, going back to what you said, I think it's really important in a personal statement to speak from the heart and to speak authentically about, what is it about your voice and your calling about this? We really want to see that highlighted in an application because as a writer, you are going to be writing on shows that have a lot of heart and a lot of thematic material that may be relevant to your experience and your background and what you can contribute to that writer's room. We talked a lot about like what makes an application stand out. Conversely, is there something that you don't want to see when you're reviewing an application?
First of all, I want to say that, and I don't know if we're going to discuss this, but you will have an opportunity to talk about samples that you've written, scripts that you've written, that and with maybe log lines and titles even, and maybe we get to I can't remember honestly if we upload the files. We will not read your samples, just so you know. We're not going to be picking anyone based on writing samples, but what we want to see from those questions about samples is, are you writing? Are you actively writing? Are you actively writing for television as opposed to features? And then through that, we can kind of get a gauge on what kind of genres and drama versus comedy and what kind of formats you're interested in. Because when we do make our final selections, we put a lot of thought into having a wide variety of horror drama, multicam kids, animation. We want to have a spread, a nice array of people because we never know what kind of job opportunities we're going to get in the future, and we want to make sure we can try to fill a lot of these individual needs as they come. But in regards to like what not to do, one thing that I'll just say we see a lot that really doesn't move the needle is just telling us that you love to watch television. We all love to watch television. People who don't want to work in television love to watch television. It's very common, so we want to see deeper than just a love of watching television. Also, it's totally cool to talk about dreams or aspirations of being a showrunner. That's something that most of us probably share. But just, again, present that. You can include that information, talk about that, but just don't do it at the cost of making it sound like you're just you're applying for this program because you want to run your own show, because that is a step way down the road from our program. That's a couple pieces of advice.
Yeah, I mean, I would even expand on that and say that like we want to see that you understand and recognize that if you are going to talk about being a showrunner, which honestly I don't recommend, that that this program is the very early step to then the next early step to many, many more steps before that can happen for most people. So take from that what you will, but most of us in this TV game are in it because we all have stories within us that we want to share and create our own shows and run our own shows. But we want to connect with you in that personal statement and see, again, very specifically, what is it about you and what you've been doing that connects to our program.
Very well said.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I'm thinking about it. Somewhere in your applications or in your resume, try to think about interests that you have outside of the TV world, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you also collect stamps or ride horses or are like a college athlete, drop little hints of that, because those little things will stand out. Because again, once we start narrowing it down, we get to a point where we're like, wow, we have, 80 people here who are all really great. And then you start really looking for smaller and smaller details. So think about, the last thing we want is a resume and application that doesn't give us any indication of who you are outside of this world.
That's really, really good advice.
Definitely.
Yeah. I would say like a lot of the red flags I've seen have been tied to like someone just restating their resume, and it's just very dry. And then the worst possible thing you could do is your personal statement is 2 sentences. It doesn't tell us anything about you. And I know this should go unsaid, but spell check is helpful. I recommend it because you'd be surprised. There's a lot of errors that slip by, so just be sure to proofread and keep an eye on you know, what you're writing. And we could also get into this, but obviously don't just use ChatGPT to write a personal statement. That is it's
Yeah.
very obvious, and we will
Mhm.
disqualify you.
Also,
Yeah.
again, sorry, Dustin, but just
No,
to,
go for it.
to add to that, one of the responsibilities of a script coordinator that I neglected to mention when
I
I
was just gonna
script
say.
coordinator is proofing, right? Proofing is a huge part of it.
Mhm.
So if you give us a resume that has a lot of errors in it, then we're like, well, maybe this person isn't ready yet for a job like this.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, be community for each other. Like, find a buddy who's also applying, read each other's personal statements and resumes, because the hardest thing to do is to proof your own work. You know, both Clay and I have, you know, worked innumerable script coordinator jobs proofreading stuff. And so we know that we're all human and you might miss a typo here and there. But that's why, you know, you ask for help. So buddy up with someone who's also applying and you know, help each other out.
Yeah, plus, it's an excellent way to build community,
Exactly.
and to meet other people for sure. Kira, real quick, who reviews the applications?
Yeah, so each year it's a little different, but we generally, well, we aim to bring in showrunners and writers who have some previous experience as support staff in some way. But regardless, everyone who reviews is a writer of some kind, and we have some absolutely amazing people who have joined our committee. Let me see if I could just link to it really quick. On our program page, we actually list out everyone who's been on our application committee in previous years. So sending that now, that link you see pop up. Yeah, they're all great people, and yeah, a lot of them have worked in these roles themselves previously, so they know what they're talking about.
Wonderful. And then when will applicants hear back about their status?
Right now, we're aiming to have all responses and updates sent out by December 5th. So regardless of whether you're accepted or not accepted or whatever happens, you will receive a response to your application. I know in the past, some people have maybe missed the email, maybe it went to their spam, maybe they didn't see it. But know that it will be sent. It will be sent by that date. And if you are, you know, if all else fails, you could sign back into Submittable, which is where you're going to be submitting your application. And your after December 5th, your updated status will be listed on Submittable under previously submitted applications. So just keep that date in mind. I know I get probably close to 500 emails from people asking me when we're going to announce, but I assure you, you're going to receive a response. So just sit tight in the meantime.
Amazing. I see a lot of people in the chat supporting each other with their personal statements, and you know, it sounds like they're launching a Discord, which is wonderful. I am curious, you know, when it comes to, you know, the writing an effective personal statement, writing a great application. Kira, I believe you know about a couple of additional resources around that might be helpful for this audience. Do you want to kind of share that resource?
Yes. Actually, funny enough, I have another resource I'll also throw in, just this article that our librarian and I sort of worked on together a few years back. Definitely reference this. It has some great advice for writing a bio, personal statement, and resume. On the topic of other resources, I'm just going to copy this in the chat. Here in the chat now, I'm posting, if it'll let me, maybe Dustin, you could do it. It's giving me some trouble.
Yeah, you might have to break it up because I think there is a word count limit.
That makes sense.
But I can do it while you kind of talk about it.
Thank you. So I'm not sure if he's here right now in the audience, but one of our graduates from our Veterans Fellowship, it's another program we run, very intensive, recently launched a YouTube channel where he and an animation writer work together. They live stream different mock writers' rooms, and they discuss movies. They try to break stories. It's just a really great space that is made by and for writers. And ideally, their goal is to build a community where they could bring together emerging writers and try to not only amplify their own voices, but connect them with opportunities they might not have otherwise had. So something cool that is coming up soon. Brian McDevitt Jr. and Phil Walker, the hosts, are going to be hosting a series of live streams where they fill out, or Brian rather, fills out applications to different fellowships and programs. The first one that's coming up is on Monday, July 28th at 5 p.m. And Brian's going to apply to the Warner Brothers program, the writers program. And then on Wednesday, August 13th, he's going to complete an application for this program. So it's kind of like an interactive space where you could see someone else apply, understand like what they are, kind of what they might be looking at in the application. And then I'll also be dropping in to, give my own pointers and tips on Brian's application, just as an exercise to show people what that process looks like from someone who's, made into fellowship and from a professional writer. So that one is going to be Wednesday, August 13th at 5 p.m. And then I think Dustin put it in the chat already. You could, if you scroll up, their YouTube channel's called The Morning Rewrite. So if you click that link and subscribe, the live stream will be there on the 13th. So cool opportunity from someone who we work with and know well. So Brian will probably drop in here later if you want to, chat with him in the chat window. But in the meantime, feel free to subscribe to the channel.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that resource. It's great that, again, program alumni and program participants are kind of sharing additional, resources to help out this community and usher in the next generation of writers. I'd like to turn to sort of the overall like class structure, and there are a lot of questions around this. So when do classes take place? How long is each session? And most importantly, do applicants need to reside in LA?
I can jump in. What we expect, and this will all be finalized in the coming months, but what we expect is that the program itself will start as it did this year in mid-January. We expect, just like this year, that classes will be held on Thursday evenings beginning at 7 p.m. Pacific time. And the commitment is you can expect classes to go at least approximately 3 hours each Thursday night. It is a mix of instruction time and then for the first month, it's all instruction time. And then we get into some guest speakers and we do take breaks. So it's all on Zoom. Clay and I are in discussions. It may, as Kira alluded to, it may extend longer than 12. Clay's already given the side eye. It may extend longer than 12 weeks next year. We'll see. We always end up going over. There's so much material. And in terms of whether you must reside in Los Angeles. So here's the deal on that. It is not a requirement. We reserve approximately 10% of spots for non-LA residents. So you absolutely do not have to live in Los Angeles to be a part of the program. However, we do consider whether you are in Los Angeles, whether you've moved to Los Angeles, to be a relevant factor in the effort that you have made to break into this career. Because for better or for worse, most writers' rooms are still here in Los Angeles. And the other reason for this limitation on the number of people who can be in the program from outside of LA is because what we have found in trying to get people jobs is in this industry, those of you who are at all familiar know, you can hear about a job, we could hear about a job tonight, submit resumes for our grads. They could get an interview tomorrow and be expected to start on Monday. It can be that fast. And if you don't live in Los Angeles, it's not feasible. I mean, some people could move cross country or get here that quickly. But the fact is that we have been faced with barriers when we try to submit people where it's, where they don't live in Los Angeles. And we've been told, I'm sorry, we can't consider these people because things are starting so quickly. And this is an in-person writer's room. So that is the reason for this, for the limitation of the number of people outside LA.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Thank you kind of for sharing that overview around LA because I know there's a lot of questions around that. It is unfortunately still one of the biggest barriers is moving out here.
Yeah.
But it is the reality. I know during COVID that there were a lot of virtual rooms and
Sure.
there was this hope that that would continue on, but it does seem like a lot of the writers' rooms are still taking place in person. And that ability to be kind of where it's all centrally located is going to be really important because those rooms, especially something that's going into development like soon, the turnaround, as you mentioned, Debbie, is really
It's
quick.
super quick. And
Yeah.
and just a caveat, when I say Los Angeles, I mean greater Southern California. Like I understand that if you live in Long Beach, you live in Pomona, you live, you are close, you could move here very quickly. So just know that when I say Los Angeles, I mean in the general Southern California region.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, and I think we did mention this, but reiterating because I saw even more questions come up. It's hosted on Zoom. So those evening sessions, Thursdays 7 p.m. Pacific, those are on Zoom.
And we also have
Okay.
in-person mixers throughout the
Mhm.
year
Yes.
with the current class, but with that, including all previous graduates. So that just helps having people in person in LA, just makes that community even stronger.
Absolutely. And can we kind of dive a little bit deeper into the overall like course structure? So what does a day in the life of a program participant look like? Like what kind of topics do you cover in those sessions? And like, what are the coursework and exercises that you go through?
Sure, we cover a ton. We in the beginning, it's all mostly about sort of a big overview of what is it like to be in a room. What is the process of how does a script written? What are the steps of a script going from idea to shooting draft and all the steps in between? And we talk about etiquette and how, tips on pitching and just sort of, behavioral tips and advice on how a room functions. But then we sort of get into the writer's assistant duties, and we do mock writers' rooms where we have people. We split the room into half, where half will be acting as writers, while the other half are actively taking the notes down and organizing their notes, and then we swap and we review the notes and we discuss the notes, and we do that a couple times throughout the class. Eventually, we shift into script coordinator duties, which is the bulk of the class. We do a lot of homework assignments from year to year. Debbie and I will adjust and tweak the lesson plans and add things to, we'll realize, oh, we sort of didn't spend enough time here, so maybe let's try to spend a special night to talk about that. And we do, we have you homework assignments where you have to distribute a script. You have to proof and distribute different documents. Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of proofreading exercises, and then like Debbie said, we will have many of the classes we will save a little bit of time to have some guest speaker come talk to the class, give their own individual insight. Debbie, what am I forgetting?
Oh, you're not forgetting stuff. But just to say it, Gia and Manny were part of the inaugural year. You all escaped homework. But the homework, as Clay said, we have evolved the program to try to, prepare people just as well as possibly they can be prepared. And part of that has been, and we've increased the homework assignments. So the 2022 class had fewer homework assignments than the 2025 class. And you know what? Every year when we ask for feedback, they want more. They want more homework. So, in terms of it's about 1/3 to 2/3 in terms of the writer's assistant to the script coordinator amount of material. And we, in addition to all of these in-class exercises and the homework, we're also, actively sharing screen a ton of the time, very interactive, teaching all about everything you need to know about using distribution platforms, about Final Draft, about all of the, business affairs paperwork that Clay alluded to when describing the job of script coordinator. I mean, if a script coordinator would have to do a task, it is covered in what we teach.
I'll add that one of the responsibilities of a writer's assistant is sometimes to be working in the script document on a monitor for the room to see. right? That's a big part of the job, is being able to type, listen to all the ideas that are being said from the writers, and physically typing them into the script onto the screen. So everyone is watching you type, seeing how you can spell or how you can't spell, seeing how slow you type or how fast you type. And we do a lot of that. That's exercises like that where people have to share their screen and work in a script while we're all dictating lines to change. Having said that, I will drop the fact that you do not have to be an exceptionally fast typist to do this job or to take this class. You should be able to type without looking at the keyboard, but we're not looking for anyone who has 120 words per minute. You just need to be competent on a keyboard. And then you do not have to have final draft experience. If you do, great, but we go through all the different tips and tricks and shortcuts to help you get used to that software as well.
Perfect. Kind of switching over to just outcomes, and I do want to be mindful of time. We're a little bit past 7 o'clock. If we haven't answered a question yet, now is a good time to start submitting questions to the Q&A box. Again, that's going to be in the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. Don't ask your questions in the chat. They're going to get lost. The chat's very active. But I kind of want to turn a little bit into outcomes of this program. So for all of you, like, what happens after students graduate? So, how do we kind of, reach out to various employers, and how do alumni get jobs? And then after that, Gia, Manny, I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you got your first job out of graduating from this program.
Yeah, I can just quickly reiterate the lookbook. I know I had mentioned it earlier. So like I said, we put together after everyone graduates, we put together a lookbook. And like, what is that? It's basically a presentation compilation file that has everything you need to know about the program, about our graduates, including their bio and links to their resumes and writing samples, and basically what these hiring professionals could do to meet with them, connect with them, hire them. Like basically a whole nice package explaining what the program is and who our graduates are. So we put that together and then we distribute it to a huge variety of industry professionals. And the goal is all to not only, connect our students with opportunities that may be existing now, but really just like promote and make the program more visible and get their names out there. So, when the opportunities do become available, they'll remember that we're here and can reach out and request these recommendations down the line. So I think as far other things that we do to promote, we also created a talent portal that is another like online virtual database where employers can look and find talent. And then we also will obviously curate recommendations specific to positions. If we know, we ask a lot of information about our graduates to make sure that we, are matching them with the best possible opportunities, not only for their skill set, but also for their areas of interest. And vice versa. Same with, a showrunner who reaches out. We want to match them with someone who is going to really thrive in that room. It's a lot of one-on-one outreach for sure, kind of rolling throughout the year. As far as I know that Gia and Manny can speak way more on this topic, but I guess from the back end, that's kind of what it looks like. Unless Clay and Debbie, if you had anything
Yeah,
to add.
I'll just jump in real quick and say, well, first of all, like, Kira's amazing. All that she does to promote this program is phenomenal, and this program is what it is because of her. What Clay and I try to do in addition is, from our vast experience, we have quite a network of people who we know and have worked with, or who know people that we've worked with, as well as do the program creators. And so we are constantly trying to, because these positions, I'm sure one of your questions is, how do you hear about these positions? Well, there's no central posting. It's all word of mouth. It's all, people looking to hire, put feelers out. So Clay and I try to position ourselves well to be able to catch when we hear that, people are hiring. And we try to do that through our networks and, through people we know, and also by trying to raise the profile of the program.
Yeah, and I'll just add that, when you finish this class, everyone who finishes this class is ready to jump in as a writer's assistant in any room. and certainly a writer's PA. A percentage of our graduates are ready to hit the ground running as script coordinators, because script coordinating is so much more responsibility and attention to detail. We're able to sort of identify who in our group are going to really shine as script coordinators and who will really shine as writer's assistants. And we're at the mercy sort of what, when the showrunner comes to us, sometimes they're saying, hi, I need a writer's assistant, or hi, I need a script coordinator. And they tell us very specific needs. And then we're able to meet those needs by giving 2 or 3 resumes of our graduates. And we don't just submit the graduates of the current class. So we still are submitting people from the first class. You know, I think the last person who we have gotten hired was a year 1 graduate. I think that's
well, among the more recent people who got
yeah.
there. Yes.
So you're not, once you're, you know, as Debbie likes to say.
Y'all say it. So when you're in this program, as Gia and Manny know, Clay and I are in your lives for as long as you'll let us be in your lives. If you don't want us around anymore, we will go away, but we are like glue and we stick to you. So
yes. And I'll just say, just the reality of our program is, you know, some people finish the program and they get hired pretty quickly. And then like Gia, as an example, soars and gets staffed. We have people who have had a ton of interviews, but haven't yet been able to land a job. Like we've gotten them interviews, but they haven't been able to seal the deal. No fault of their own. It's just how the chips lay. And then we have people, unfortunately, who have yet to get an interview. And it's a numbers game. That's just the reality of it. We doesn't mean we're not submitting people, but we also don't oversubmit. We don't send 40 resumes for a job. We think about, Debbie and I we get together, on a phone, we talk about who should we submit, and we send 3 to 5 resumes per job opportunity that comes our way.
I think it's also important to highlight, because I ran talent development for a writing program previously, that a rejection for a job after a job interview is obviously crushing, but is not necessarily indicative of your skills as a writer or your skills as a writer's assistant or script coordinator. It really is, as you kind of mentioned, Clay, and thank you for saying, a numbers game. And it could just be the needs of that room are very specific. But again, it is not necessarily a commentary on your ability, your experience, your skills, and the value that you would bring to a room.
Exactly.
For sure. And then Gia, Manny, let's kind of touch about how you got your first job. So if you could go back in time a little bit, what was that experience like?
Yeah, I think I can trace every job that I've had in the industry so far back to the program. When our lookbook was sent out, I got 2 interviews. One was for Agatha All Along, and one was for a Black Lady sketch show. Clay had previously worked as the script coordinator on WandaVision, so he knew all those people very well, and like a lot of the people from WandaVision were obviously coming over onto Agatha All Along. So even just mentioning him in the room was like, oh my god, we love Clay. We love if you have Clay's vouch, like there's got to be something about you. So that was huge, and that was wonderful. And then I did not end up booking the Black Lady sketch show job for season 3, but then in season 4, they had my name. They had previously interviewed me, and they called me up and asked if I was available. And I think I was available like right after Agatha ended. It was literally like a 1 or 2 week turnaround. Like Debbie was saying, they were like, can you start on Monday? And that one was also a really special experience because I was lucky enough to work with Kanisha Williams, who was in my class in the Writers Access Support Staff Training Program, and they were the script coordinator, so we were like working together, having already completed this program together. We knew each other. It was really fun, really wonderful.
And yeah, they were the script coordinator who took over when I got promoted on my show.
Oh my god, really?
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's amazing. That's so exciting.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, we'll talk later. And then obviously I was off of Agatha. My name was like known at Marvel, so I was called back for this Marvel room. So I knew like basically every job that I've had so far has been traced back to the support staff training program. And I mean, like Clay was saying, like it is a numbers game, and despite like, you know, what he was saying about the like rise through the industry, I haven't worked in a very long time since that last job. And I don't want to like be bleak or anything, but I just want to be like real about how even just because it's like it does not reflect on your character or your ability to succeed. It's just how it works. I had a really, really good year, and this year I just have not worked at all. It's just how it works. It's feast or famine. The industry is in a really weird place. But since we graduated, you immediately enter this community of like alumni and people who are in similar positions to you, and like getting an email from Kira is always very exciting because it means that there's some sort of mixer or event coming up, and I'll get to see people that I know and meet people that I don't know. I got to meet so many people from the most recent support staff training program class at the mixer like last week, and that was so exciting. It's so fun to see new people. So even, you know, when things feel kind of like weird or that you're not like maybe getting a lot of interviews, you have a community and this like support network of people who you have like gone through this thing with and get to commune with, you know. Yeah, both.
Yeah, I think after the program, I might have had 1 or 2 interviews before I had the interview for the job that I actually did end up getting. The great thing about this program is like the community, because you really feel like everyone really has your back. And I remember even going to like one of like I think we had like a barbecue once, and I remember Debbie was like, "You're gonna get the next one. I know you're gonna get the next one." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And I mean, some of these jobs fill up so fast. It's before you can even respond to it, it might already be filled, which is you know, and again, it's just part of it, you know, and we all know it's a part of it. So I had a couple of situations like that. And you know, I was trying to be as proactive as possible to try to find things. I was working as a translator, working freelance on shows, and they'd be like, "Okay, it pays this." I'm like, you know, you don't have to pay me for this one page if you just take my resume and, you know, give it to like, you know, the script coordinator. Uh, but you know, I did get this opportunity. I believe Clay worked on WandaVision with our showrunner.
I'm using all my WandaVision contacts.
With our amazing showrunner Gretchen Enders, and who was a writer on WandaVision as well. And I remember that interview because I remember how quickly it went by, and it was a 45-minute interview, and it didn't feel that way. We just talked for that time, and it was really great. And one of the best things I learned about the program is to always be prepared. You know, always read the script, do research on the project, on who you're meeting with, and I went in with casting ideas, which she did ask me about, so that was good. And yeah, it was after the interview, I know some of you all mentioned, you know, some things move pretty quickly. I had the opposite experience. We were still trying to get the room together, so you know, after a while, I was like, "Hey, like, is the room starting? You know, what's going on?" I was getting a little nervous, but we did eventually start like 3 weeks later. But it did give me time to, like Debbie said, kind of figure out like that negotiating stuff, figure out there's so many things to like learn about, like joining the union I didn't know about. But yeah, that was my experience.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And Gia, thank you so much for touching on sort of the like volatility of the industry, which we're definitely going to get into. I do want to kind of turn it over to Q&A because we do have a lot of questions. And the success stories were great. We are going to take a little bit of a tonal pivot here because I do want to address a couple of elephants in the room. So the biggest one and one of the biggest questions that I'm seeing is how many people are accepted into this program every year?
Yeah.
Yep. So the last 2 classes have had 18 people. And that's the largest that it would be pretty much.
I can tell you both of those years we went in saying we were only going to take 16 people.
16.
We
yeah.
were sure of it. Yeah.
Yes.
We committed to 16 and we wound up taking 18. And that's down from, I'm sorry, Debbie,
no,
from
you go.
the first two classes we had with Gia and Manny were groups of 24. And Debbie and I and Kira all felt like, maybe that was just a little too unmanageable. So we pared it down. And mostly because, we say this over and over again, we don't want this to be a factory. We want to have a manageable number of people that we can hopefully try to get placed. We're not just pumping people into, hundreds of people through so that that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, I mean, just to carry that ball forward a little bit more, we don't want to take people into a program that the numbers can't support in the marketplace. It's not fair to you. And in addition, the program is very much about Clay and I teaching the program participants skills, but equally it's about Clay and I getting to know each person individually, to get to know their skill level and get to know them so that we can place them, help them get placed in a writer's room that's right for them. And when we had 24 people on a screen, it was unwieldy for us. It did not allow us, we did the very best we could, but there were certainly people in each of those classes of 24 we just couldn't get to know as well as we wanted to, couldn't get to know their skill levels as closely as we wanted to. And just one last thing, as we've mentioned, there's homework, and there are currently 4 assignments that are part of the class. And, we spend a great deal of time going through that homework and giving feedback on that homework. And it makes a huge difference if, even just having a couple more homework assignments, a couple more people in the class, that also becomes unwieldy for us to give the homework the attention that it needs. So we're not trying to gatekeep, is my point, by keeping it to that number of participants.
100%. And I think it is important to highlight that, there is not a lack of talent out there. It's really the lack of employment opportunities. Kind of touching on that a little bit more too, how many students are hired in support staff roles following graduation, and how, just to kind of touch on this a little bit, how have you been navigating the industry recently in terms of presenting new talent or graduates from this program for these opportunities?
Yeah, I think, of course, the specific numbers evading me right now, but there's probably been, correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie and Clay, close to 40 or so. No, that might be, it's 40%. Sorry, 40%.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's more than that.
Yeah. So yeah, we do make every effort. And I will say there's also several of our graduates who are now WGA members, which is amazing, like amazing to see. I already forgot the rest of the question, but Debbie and Clay, feel free to hop in.
I mean, I feel like we have had about, I think we're between 100 and 110-ish people come through the program. Debbie, does that sound right?
That does sound right. Yeah.
I think it's pretty close. And I would say, and I used to know this number by heart, but I do think we are north of 50 in terms of people who have gotten at least one job.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So
Yeah.
that is about 50%. And keep in mind, there is a small percentage of people who choose not to work in this industry after the program. So, there are some people who just like, you know what, I've changed my mind, or something has come up and I'm just not available for this. So there's a percentage that are not interested. Yeah, so it's not ideal, but I think it's pretty. I do think we all agree that that's pretty damn good considering
The state of the industry.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'll just say, the last couple years of the program, I don't know that anyone from the most recent program has been hired in a position yet. And that's just because of the state of the industry just being so stagnated right now. And the prior class was going through the program during the strikes. And so they graduated into an industry that was, just getting past that. And, and that is why there was a bit of a time gap between the fourth class and the fifth class, because again, we don't want this program to make promises it can't keep. We want to put you out there at a time when you have a good chance of actually applying these skills in a writer's room.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's not to discourage too, because like these are skills that will carry forward. And I mean, again, like we've already said, Gia and Manny were in the first class, and they'll never escape. They're, as long as they want to be around us, we want to be around them. So this is, we're in your corner basically perpetually.
Sure. One other question that's been popping up a lot is whether or not the Writers Access program is a paid opportunity.
It is not. It is a class that is free to you because the Writers Guild Foundation's mission is to provide this kind of educational opportunity at no cost. But it's not like one of the writing fellowships where sometimes you get paid.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying. We also have a lot of questions from those that may have disabilities or invisible disabilities. So I'm going to go through a couple of these. Someone is asking whether or not dictation or, audible note-taking software is okay to use, both potentially in, doing coursework, but also even inside of a writer's room.
Yeah, that's a really good question. That is a tough one. I don't know of any writers' rooms that use voice to text software exclusively. It doesn't mean that that isn't effective and that can't work. What that comes down to is a showrunner who is willing to put in the work and time to make that option available and to be inclusive and to see the value in that, which is in that case, unfortunately, out of our control. We certainly have had people come to the program with a variety of disabilities, with people who worry about their ability to work 60-hour weeks and 15-hour days for a variety of reasons, and it's unfortunate, and we were there to help and cheerlead and try to be clear with any potential hires if we think someone is super suitable and capable to do these roles. We are really at the mercy of a showrunner who is willing to take on those extra steps to make that possible. But yes, please apply, and we will absolutely consider you, and maybe we can figure stuff out for someone's specific circumstances.
For sure. And just following up on that a little bit, I think there's also a little bit of fear coming from this community around sharing some background about their disabilities, especially maybe those that have an invisible disability. So is that a requirement to disclose? Is it recommended to disclose? I think there's a bit of curiosity around this.
Sure. It is not a requirement to disclose. Personally, on your application, I would recommend it because it's a part of who you are, and we want to know who you are in this application. And we, like Clay was saying, everything is very showrunner dependent in this industry. There's not a lot of uniformity, but we want to get to know our students. We want to represent you and advocate for you in the very best way we can. And as Clay said earlier, we're looking to have the best mix of people possible in the class. And that means people from all different backgrounds and all different characteristics, including people of varying abilities. And, we want to have you, in our class with us. And we absolutely do not we would never not consider someone because of any disability, invisible or visible. You are coming from an underrepresented community that enhances your application as far as Clay and I are concerned.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate sort of that answer, Debbie, and coming at it from a compassionate place. I will also share that, again, working in talent development, I did have a writer with known disabilities, too, as a matter of fact, who both got placed in writers' rooms. So it is possible, and it is, a conversation that can be had with those showrunners, with those writers' rooms, and with those, creative leaders in that room. Another question that pops up too, surrounding this is whether or not someone needs to be a member of a union or repped or have an agent or a manager. That's not a requirement either for
Not
that.
at all. Not at all. I can tell
Perfect.
you, currently not repped myself.
Oh, there we go.
It does, yeah, you don't need to be repped. You don't need, if you get a writer's assistant or script coordinator job, you will be required to join the union. If it's based in Los Angeles, you'll be required to join Local 871, which represents writers, assistants, and script coordinators, as Gia and Manny both did. But that's just something that happens once you get the job. There's no gatekeeping whatsoever.
Wonderful. And you mentioned, just really quickly to circle back. So these writers assistant script coordinator roles are part of a union, correct?
They are part of IATSE.
Perfect.
I'm going to start typing. I'm going to be typing replies to some of these questions, so I'll be in and out in terms of listening.
Absolutely. We have a lot of questions here. As I'm scrolling through, I do remember seeing some around whether or not writers' rooms are available in areas like New York or Chicago. And I also saw a question about whether or not this program helps support those that want to break into maybe late night television writing.
Good questions. So we have, not recently, but we have in the past placed people into rooms in New York. We have some grads who live in New York, and there are, a number of rooms that happen in New York. I'm sure rooms happen in Chicago. We've never placed anyone in Chicago. Not that we couldn't if we knew about it and could try to get someone, submitted and interviewed and hired. But in terms of union representation, the union that represents writers, assistants, and script coordinators here in Los Angeles, it's a specific jurisdiction, so you would only be unionized if you're in an LA-based writers' room. And then, Dustin, what was the other question?
I think it was about whether or not there's been anyone, or are there any opportunities in writing for late night specifically?
Oh, late night, yes. So we did have, Kira, back me up here or correct me if I get this wrong. We did have someone another New York-based person who did get hired to work as an assistant to a late night person.
Yeah, that was it's like, I don't know if we're name dropping or not, but it was.
No, I don't think we should.
Then let's not. But it was someone who's based in New York, and
I communicated
yes.
with her recently, and that job went away, unfortunately. So
Bummer.
yes. But it can happen. I will say that working as a script coordinator in late night is completely different from working on a single camera or multi-camera comedy or drama. Well, there's only multi-camera comedies. You know what I'm saying? It's a completely different job, and neither Clay or I have done that job, so we would not even know how to. It's kind of more script supervisor / script coordinator. So you will not be trained to do a script coordinator job on a late night show. But like I said, we've had people hired to be assistants in late night. We don't tend to have a lot of connections to late night shows, but we do have people coming to look at the lookbooks, and Kira and the people at the Writers Guild Foundation do an incredible job promoting the program to anyone who we could possibly get to consider our grads. All that to say is, it's possible, but not as common to have late night opportunities. Is the too long didn't read.
Appreciate that, Debbie. This is a little bit of a maybe a question that might be out there, because I think it also applies to just general job hunting, because I've heard this advice back and forth in just applying for jobs, regardless of whether or not they're in the entertainment industry. But a lot of people have been asking about the resume specifically. Should it be just one page? Can it go on for 2 pages? Can we kind of lay this one to rest? Because I've heard a lot of different
okay. So
on this.
Let me just say, there is no right answer. There is just, like, in this case, I'm giving my answer. So your mileage may vary. I was taught early on in my professional life to never have a resume longer than a page. I was told, and the reason I was told that is because I was told that it signals to employers that there's a certain attitude you have about yourself that is conveyed by having a multi-page resume, which would not be a reason ever that I would have done a multi-page resume. I would have just been, I'm an overthinker. I would have just been like trying to make sure I had like all the details that needed to be there so someone knew what they were getting and maybe would really want to interview me if they knew all the things I did in my jobs. And so as a result of that, I have never ever submitted a resume that's longer than a page. And what I end up doing as my resume lengthens is I call or I shorten descriptions. The other thing I will say is that I was also told that you should never ever submit a resume that just lists the positions. You should give some kind of description of what your job duties are for the same reason that it denotes some kind of arrogance. Or again, I'm not imputing that to you. I'm just telling you what I was taught. Certainly if you have a like I've done my fair number of script coordinator jobs. So I've grouped them together on the resume and given them all the same description because people don't need to see the same description doing the same job 6 different or however many different times. And I think obviously I do it that way. I think it's fine. So I would highly recommend stick to a page and make sure you give some description about your job duties.
For sure.
Yeah, I think the one exception I had seen was like a very like someone who had had like totally dual career life in like entertainment versus outside of entertainment, and it made sense in their specific case. Generally speaking, like Debbie said, I think 1 page is highly recommended.
Sure. And then on those resumes, does anyone need to add references, or will references ever be brought up in the application process or interview process?
For the program?
Yeah, for the program.
Okay, so references are not required at all. You don't need to, that's not part of what we vet in the application process. And actually my advice, I mean, you can put references on a resume in general, but in my experience, when people want references, they're going to ask you in the interview, or they're going to ask you in advance of the interview to make sure that you come with references and contact information. And I would never include someone else's contact info on my resume. So that's why I think references don't need to be included on a resume. But that's, again, your mileage may vary. That's just Debbie 101.
I love Debbie 101. I want to take that class. Kira, earlier you mentioned that there is or alluded to that there is an advantage or potentially something that's more beneficial to applying earlier than later. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, from a technical standpoint, it's better. Just because you never know what's going to happen. I'd say we get close to 70%, or if not more, of our applications in the final 24 hours, maybe even like 50% in the last 4 hours. There have been many, many, many instances where people who were very sure that they were going to make it in on time missed the deadline for whatever reason that might be. And for that reason, that's like probably one of the top things. Like you never know what's going to happen from a tech perspective. And then on the other end, it also gives us a better idea of our admissions committee. We're going to be reaching out to our committee leading up to it. Getting a general idea of how many applications are coming in helps us get the right number, and it keeps us on track with the timeline. If we end up getting double the number of applications in the last 24 hours, it does add a slight delay to the process for reviewing, where we have to invite more reviewers to take on that load. So it's a lot of it's a big help to us to submit. And I'm not saying like submit, 4 weeks early, just even getting it within the, days leading up or the week leading up is great. It's just, you never know what's going to happen in that last, 24-hour window. And yeah, it's cool to be able to sort of like see the number of applications we're getting, and yeah, maybe even get started early if at all possible.
Perfect. Clay, I see that you are in the Q&A box. You're typing out a lot of answers to questions. I do see that you wanted to answer a question live around those that have previously applied to the program and did not make it. We have several people, I think, in the audience that have applied in the past and didn't make it. what advice and this is for everybody, what advice do you have to improve their chances of acceptance for this cohort? And in particular, I don't see the question up on screen right now because there's a lot of them, but I remember someone asking, like, they got to the quarterfinalist round, but then not the finalist round. And like, what are sort of those differences that would, bring someone into the folds into that finalist round if they didn't quite get close to making it?
Right. Full disclosure, I accidentally hit answer that question live, not knowing what I was doing,
But
but
I
I'm happy.
think, but I think it's a good one
live.
to answer. I do think it's a good one to answer.
No, it's a great question. So first of all, we highly encourage you to reapply, and we do, if you got to a finalist and we see you suddenly you're back in the finalists again, we definitely take note of that. Beyond that, and then someone else asked in the chat, and I was just trying to figure out how to answer the question. It was like, what do you do if you keep hitting the same level of acceptance, but can't seem to get beyond that? It's a great question. I would consider, I don't know if typos were your problem, that might be one of the things. Maybe just, it depends on, just sort of like really step back and read what you've written in the past and try to look at it through our eyes, if you can, of like what are you presenting yourself in the best in the right light? Are we hearing and are we seeing examples of how you have tried to break in? Are you including? Do you have examples of that? What is your background like? What are the moments in your life that sort of put you on this path? Those little things that stand out are things to look at.
And I would say, what have you done in the year or however long since you last applied to try to continue to break into this role? Because there was obviously something that we all saw in your application previously that got you real close. And honestly, if you were a finalist and you didn't make it in, it's just so, it's so hard. There's so few slots. It's not, it's not you, it's us. But like, you were a finalist. It means that you were right there. So tell us, you were a finalist and you went forward, and what constructive things have you done with this time? And
That's great advice. And also, have we actually said the number of how many applications we've gotten in the past? Because that's important. That's important context.
Yeah.
I think last year we had 2,200 applications.
No, that was the first year.
Well, it was the first year, and then we went down to 1,100, but then I think we went back up. Like we just, regardless of the hard number, it's well over 1,000 applications that we're getting. And
Yeah, it's like 1,500 was, I think, but last year's.
Yeah, so we're only able to take 16 to 18 people, and so the odds are not in anyone's favor here. So sometimes, again, it's and the way this works, right? And this is full transparency. As Kira said, we have a number of people on our in a group who review all these applications, and all of us have different sort of things that we're looking for in applications. What's important to Debbie and I in candidates may not be important to someone who came up a different way and is in a room and they're looking for certain things. And so as a result, we get a really interesting mix of candidates as we narrow it down. But what that also means is there's no one real answer to how to impress the person reading your application, because we never know which one of the 20 of us are going to be reading your application.
Sure. And also something that I also want to answer that I saw in the chat is, and this goes without saying now that we've kind of talked about recurring applicants, but if you did apply in the past and you did not get in, that does not disqualify you from reapplying to this program. So we definitely encourage, another attempt. I know, Kira, you've dealt with applications, not just for this program, but maybe other programs where they didn't get in on their first try.
Yeah, that is very I think many of the folks who apply each year obviously are multi-year applicants, but many who get accepted are multi-year applicants. And
several this year.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, for me personally, when I'm looking at an application and I'm down to two people who on paper might be right there neck and neck with each other, and the only difference is someone has applied several times versus this might be the other person's first year applying, I typically lean towards the person who has applied multiple times, because to me it shows tenacity and commitment and dedication, and these are all things that we really value. Especially we have a tag that is associated with our applications who, not only for returning applicants, but for folks who have made it to the finals or semifinals or quarterfinals in previous years. And we tag those applications so that our current reviewers can see who maybe was previously a finalist or a semifinalist as well.
Amazing. There's a couple of questions around relocating to LA. So, do we provide any sort of relocation support? And if not, do we have any resources around trying to find housing in the LA area if you're moving over here?
I would say there is no support from the official support from the program, but if you are a program participant, as Gia and Manny have talked about, there is a community among graduates of the program, and that communicate with each other, that use a Slack channel, that use email, that talk in person, and certainly share resources. And I have seen people who have moved here to Los Angeles after being part of the program, who have been able to find places to live because they connected with people from the program who gave them resources, or kept their ears out to people they knew who were looking for roommates or what have you. So nothing official, but lots of unofficial community.
There are a lot of individuals that are also asking about their very specific experience around, being like a script supervisor, for example, on a production, or potentially a freelance writer once on a show. I just want to reiterate, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that really what we are looking for are those people that have not worked previously as a writer's assistant or a script coordinator, and ideally also not as a staff writer. Everything else is sort of, if you've been a writer's PA, if you've been a showrunner's assistant, that is all fine. If you're coming from a position within the industry, like a PA or someone who is like a script supervisor, all of those positions are allowed, right?
Exactly. And welcome.
And welcome. Wonderful, wonderful.
And like you said, a freelance writer, like, yeah, of course, you are someone trying to get into a room and trying to, seize any opportunity you can.
Absolutely. There are also a few questions just to clarify. We are also only staffing for productions that are here in the US. There's not any opportunities within Canada. These are only American opportunities.
So far.
So far.
Say so far. I mean, not through the program. I will say I have friends who've gotten jobs, in writers' rooms, and then their job has, I know people whose jobs who've moved within. One of our grads is now temporarily relocating to New York with a show. And I have a friend, actually myself, who, she didn't relocate, but the writer's assistant on her show relocated to like New Zealand for a show. Yeah, so no, so far not in our program, but who knows? We'll take any opportunity we can to get people into writers' rooms.
Perfect. And Kira, can you reiterate, because maybe some people have joined a little later, or just specifically clarify, we are not looking for any writing samples in the application period, correct?
No, it's not a priority. And of course, now I'm spacing. I'm like, did we ask for a sample last year?
Never asked for samples.
Yeah, it's
Nope.
not something that we prioritize. Though I will say, if you want to consider it so, your personal statement is your writing sample,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Very well said.
Okay, apparently we did ask for a writing sample last year. What do you know? I do know that some reviewers look at these things.
We
so I think I know we did one year, I'm pretty sure. This is something that we should know.
We always ask people to tell us about what they've written and list log lines and list titles, but I am fairly certain we have never ever asked for a writing sample, because we are pretty clear that this is not a writing program.
Yeah, so as you can see, that's not a priority. Though I would say in your mind, consider your personal statement to be your writing sample. That is, it's so critical to your application. Just be sure not to, you know, don't waste that opportunity.
Amazing. Can you talk a little bit about the application to interview to acceptance pipeline? So what are the different phases once the application submission window closes?
A lot of that is behind the scenes. So we don't conduct interviews for this program, just simply due to the volume of applications we receive. There's a 5-stage, I think it's 5 stages total review process with our reviewers behind the scenes. So we will be working at that. And then, of course, the only thing that really applicants will see is the response they receive at the end. So we'll reach out to applicants after we've made those decisions. Typically, we reach out to accepted applicants first. Once we confirm that they're all available, say we pick 18. Once each of those 18 students have confirmed, we email the rest of the applicants with the results.
Gotcha. There's also a couple of questions around whether or not particular interests in writing for a specific format or genre are considered in the application process. And if those, support staff positions vary depending on the genre or the focus that you're trying to go into.
If I understand the question correctly, do you mean like, do we consider the different genres in reviewing applications?
Yes.
I would say yes, insofar as we're trying to create a class of diverse people who, write diverse things. So we don't want a class of 18 comedy writers. That would be way too much for anybody in a Zoom. So we do try to balance out, people's genres, people's interests. And certainly if you are someone who writes everything, it's fine to say you write everything, but it is much better if you tell us what lane you've picked, because even if you do write comedy and drama, I'm sure we all tend to gravitate towards one or the other, and within that, genres. And we do try to balance that out. In terms of whether the rooms differ, the way comedy rooms and drama rooms operate is different, and we get into that in the class. At core, the skills are the same. It's just Clay referenced how there's a lot of group writing in a comedy room, projecting your screen. Gia, I'm sure you can speak to this from a Black Lady sketch show. And it's something we put you through your paces on in the class to get you prepared to be able to do that. That's not something that typically happens in a drama. So that's one difference, but the skills at heart are the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the skills were completely applicable. It was a totally different situation than, on my first job as in like a more standard writer's room. We were like reading sketches every day and turning them around. But it was also, I mean, ironically, we didn't have the proofreading homework, even though we kind of worked on that in the sessions. But that was obviously very helpful because I was turning around like scripts or sketch scripts every single day for like, it would be like we would break at 10, get them at 2, turn them around by 3, then proof over the like Zoom with Kanisha. So yeah, all of the. I mean, obviously Debbie kind of gravitates towards drama and Clay kind of gravitates towards comedy, and so they outline the difference between those rooms and how things sort of operate and contrast with each other, and through that you get this holistic sense of what the actual skill set is and how to apply that in even the most fringe sketch show situations.
There's this question from Alana that I really like, and I don't think that we need to be naming names, but Alana asks, has there been a personal statement that Clay and Debbie read that was particularly memorable? Like, was there anything that was memorable in a personal statement? Or, just to kind of expand on this question for Gia and Manny, have you ever received feedback on your personal statement or something that you've said in your pitch that someone was like, that's something that I really remembered or that really stuck with me?
To answer the first question, and Clay, feel free to jump in, but
My memory does not work as well.
Yeah,
as
I know.
yours.
That's why I jumped in. I would say that something that sticks out was reading, and this was actually true of a couple people in the most recent class, reading some personal statements that just talked about specifically, the journey they had taken to try to make this career happen, to try to break into a writer's room. It was, as Manny was saying earlier, specific anecdotes really stick with you. And I remember there was, one applicant who had applied multiple times, and in between the last time they had applied and this time had moved to Los Angeles and talked about that journey. And that was very memorable to me and very meaningful. In addition to talking about like other life changes, like getting married and convincing their spouse to take this chance with them to move to LA, and like, wow, that's really meaningful. So
Gia, Manny, is there anything that you've received feedback on and sort of pitching yourself as a writer where someone's like, this is the thing that I remembered from your interview or from your pitch?
That's a good question. I'm gonna get back to you on because I can't think of anything
No
right now.
worries, no worries.
hard one.
We're also running a little bit tight on time, and I just want to make sure that I get this question into, and a lot of the questions that we've received are similar. So let's say, for example, I, apply to this program, but I don't get in. Or let's say I'm watching the recording for this info session. This recording, by the way, there's been questions around this. Yes, a recording will be posted on our website and shared in the newsletter at a later date of this info session in case you missed anything. But let's say I'm watching this recording and I'm watching it like the day before applications are due. So it's like it just right as the submission window is closing, there's an extenuating circumstance that's preventing me from applying this year, or I apply and I don't get in. What should I be doing within the next year to prepare myself for next year's application?
So I think all of the things that we've been talking about, just to, prepare yourself in general, that to show us that you're trying to get into a writer's room in a support staff role. Clay talked earlier about, first of all, that, you demonstrate that you have a passion for writing television, that this is a career path that you are committed to. So you're continuing to write, you're continuing to hone your craft. I do keep saying this is not a writing program, so it's not that we're going to read those scripts, but we want to know that you're continuing to move forward as a writer, as someone who's trying to prepare yourself to be in a room, that you are doing everything you can to expand your network. You're attending any events, whether in Los Angeles or outside of Los Angeles, and creating your own community and creating your own opportunities. Maybe and Clay mentioned earlier, like being part of a writers group, that's a huge thing. Maybe you get together with some friends and create your own writers room, and you meet once a month and get some reps in, or any of. And as I talked about, someone in a recent application talked about, taking the brave and scary step of leaving home for the first time and moving to Los Angeles. There are probably many more things that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but, just anything that shows that you're making an effort to move forward in this career.
Gia, Manny, anything that aspiring writers should be thinking about, before they kind of apply for this position, or, things that they should be working on?
I was when I applied to this, it was like really reassuring, and obviously it was really reassuring to like be accepted, but I also did not rest all of my hopes on this specific program. And I think that applying to many programs, and I know that there are like application fees, and some have more of a barrier to entry, and some have been like closing down, unfortunately, but like just getting into the habit of putting yourself out there and applying to many programs, because this was one of many programs that I applied to when I initially did so, is a way to kind of kill the voice in your head that's like, this is impossible, I'm never going to be able to get into anywhere, and none of this is going to work for me. Being more active about trying to get my foot in the door and trying to put my name in places that I knew would give me a better chance of getting that foot in the door, rather than just sort of shouting into the void and being like, what's going to happen? That helped me a lot. And it also just helps you be better at applying to things when you maybe need to reapply in a year's time or so. So yeah, that's my advice.
Excellent advice. Well said.
Yeah, I think I was one of those people. I know you mentioned earlier, people who reapply. I was one of the people who would always reapply to these programs, and I'd be a semifinalist, a finalist, and I could never break through to that final round. And then when I got a call from Kira, that was, very exciting and very reassuring, because even if I didn't get into a program or whatever thing I was applying to, even just getting that semifinalist thing felt like such a huge win to me. And it was so reassuring, and that I was like on the right track. And yeah, I think, just keep going. And actually have an answer to your last question, since I told you I'd get back to you about
Yeah.
pitching yourself. Was that during my interview for the job that I did end up getting for the writer's assistant, there was something on my resume that I was really nervous to talk about, because I had to, we all have like kind of like not such great jobs in the past. I'm like, as long as she doesn't ask me about this one job, like I'll be fine. And that was like the first question. And and I was being very diplomatic, and we actually bonded over that. She's like, I know exactly what that experience was, and I had it too. And the great thing about this new generation of showrunners and writers is that we all came up together, and we all know like how to be like better bosses and help the next generation have better experiences. So that was a really great experience. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Manny. I
Yeah,
think that's also important. Yeah, so many of us have had jobs in the past that may not have been the ideal setting for us, or maybe we've worked with someone who, for whatever reasons, personalities or working style just didn't align. So thank you for sharing all of that. We do only have 2 minutes left, and still so many questions that we haven't gotten to yet. I do want to close if there's anything really important that any of you would like to share that we haven't covered yet. Any parting words of wisdom, any last pieces of advice for everyone that is joining us tonight.
So I'm sure I'm just going to say something using probably some of the same words, but maybe some different words that I've already hammered about with the personal statement, but I'll just say it again. Kira said it the best, which is it's your chance to show it. It's your writing sample, but it's personal. Tell us about you. I understand that all of us are writers who want to share our voices and want to tell, want to have our stories told and shared. But I want to know what specifically about you distinguishes you and would make you a puzzle piece to put in this upcoming class. So, Manny and Gia have given you some incredible advice. I always hearken back to, and I forget who said this, but it's not an original thought to me. The more specific you are in your storytelling, the more universally appealing and the more universally people can connect to it. So don't be afraid to be revealing and specific.
Great.
Agree more. Clay?
I just always want to stress how the odds of getting in this program are very slim. I'm a big proponent of just like being fully honest and transparent. And we wish we could teach everyone. We wish we could get everyone jobs. So put your best foot forward. And if you don't get accepted, please don't take any offense to it or feel like we're slighting you or that you have failed in any way. But just keep if you really want to be in this industry, just keep looking for as many opportunities to get in. And I'll just say that I absolutely adore this program, and I'm so honored to be a part of it.
Same. I mean, it is one of the greatest joys of my life to get to teach for this program and be a part of the community. It is a privilege.
We are at the WGF so grateful and honored to have you both instructing this program. Gia, Manny, thank you so much for donating your time and giving your insights. Can we all just give a big round of applause, virtual round of applause to this audience or to our panelists tonight? This has been wonderful. There they are. Perfect. I love these little reactions in the corner. Thank you so much for joining us. Just to put a button on everything, I'm going to throw some information about the foundation in the chat really quickly. Applications do open on August 7th at 11 a.m. and the submission window closes end of day 11:59 p.m. on September 16th. Make sure to check out the website for any FAQs and those eligibility criteria. I will link those again in the chat for you. A quick reminder too to join that morning rewrite segment on August 13th. We will have more application updates in early August. Again, Clay, Debbie, Gia, Manny, Kira, thank you all so much for your time tonight, and best of luck with applying to this program. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dustin. You've been an amazing moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, take care, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night.
Bye.